What's up, guys? Gonna do a quick video here, kind of announce what is on the horizon. Been dropping a few hints and maybe you guys have figured it out, but I don't know, a couple weeks back Ruben gave me a call. This is Ruben from Muscle City Madness, and he was pitching some ideas about doing like an engine build competition. And as you may know, I had just happened to be pulling a 440 from my dad's barn that's falling down. And so for me, that's kind of the perfect build to segue into what we talked about. So long story short, we brought it to the rest of the group, a bunch of guys that we kind of all hang out together and talk some YouTube stuff, and amongst other things. And we decided that we're going to do an engine build, like a budget engine build that all of us are going to participate in. Now this is going to be a little unique because normally you would have like some sort of budgetary restriction or some horsepower goal or performance at the track or something like that. So this build is actually going to be in at least 3 phases. So the first phase is going to be the short block, second phase is long block, third phase is putting the engine in a car. Okay. Yeah, so how do you do something with the short block? Because you don't have a complete engine, you can't run the engine and see who wins, who prevails here, right? So this is actually a build that is going to be decided by the viewers. The idea is each one of us is going to build this short block. We're going to put out a couple of videos a month on it, on the build. Once we're done, and we're not going to be rushing this either. That's another cool thing, because I think most of us are kind of burnt out on stressing and rushing and trying to meet this goal and stuff. It's like we want to keep things very low key on this build. But once we complete all of these builds, we're gonna put the builds up to vote to you guys, the viewers. And so it's gonna be up to your vote. We're gonna try to earn your vote to decide that our build is the best build. So it's not gonna be who spends the most money or the least money. It's not gonna be puts the best parts in the engine, has the best machine work done. It's gonna be none of that. It's basically gonna be, we're gonna build all of the engines that we want to build, and it's up to you to decide which build you like the best, and you get to vote on it. So when all the builds are complete, we'll have the builds presented on each channel. So my channel will have all the builds. You guys will vote for those builds, and then we will compile everything. So the idea of being there's probably going to be some bias, right? At least I would hope that my build would do well on my channel. Like in the case of Ruben, his build will probably do better on his channel than on my channel. So we'll all vote on each one of the channels. We'll combine all of the results, and then whoever wins the build off, right? And then we will go on to phase 2. Okay, so let's dive into the rules. So rule number 1, and I'm not sure we could call these rules. Maybe we call them guidances or something like that. Okay, so anyway, the first rule: the initial short block purchase and stock components of the short block will not be factored into the cost. Okay, so like that 440 I pulled from my dad's barn a long time ago, I paid $500 for that C body. I pulled the motor out of it, junked the car. I have an initial cost of $500. That is not going to count towards the build, because the assumption here is that we've all got an engine laying around that we've bought, whatever, or we're going to the junkyard to pull something. And like yourself, you probably have a spare engine laying around somewhere in your shop or garage, or maybe in your field, or parts car, who knows. But the idea is that you're taking something that you already have. You're not actually going out to buy anything, And we didn't want to take that cost, because there's obviously a lot of disparity between, say, like a 318 and a 440, or let's say a modern Hemi of some sort. It's probably more, the modern Hemi is probably more valuable than a 318. Maybe we're talking like $100 engine versus a $500 engine or a $1,000 engine. I don't know. But we kind of like wipe that all clean, so we all start at kind of the same 0 point. So secondly, there is no displacement restriction. So whether, because this is not necessarily a horsepower goal or a particular dollar goal or a particular performance goal, it's just a build, and it's sort of like a popularity build. What do the viewers like the best? We're not putting any kind of restrictions on displacement. So whether you got a 318 or 440, you are good to go. And there's no family restrictions. So if you're building an LA small block, a raised block, or a low deck big block, a Gen 3 Hemi, a slant 6, whatever it is you want to build, you are open and able to build whatever it is your heart desires. So I think that was 3 rules. So the 4th rule is there is no expense or machining restrictions. So we can spend as much money as we want, and if we decide we want to machine some parts or the whole engine or whatever, you're completely open to that. So I mean, obviously we're trying to promote a budget-minded build, but to one guy that might be, say, a $3,500 long block, and to another guy that might be, a $5,000 engine, right? What does a budget build mean? Well, it's open to interpretation, and the idea of having a bunch of us build a lot of different engines from different philosophies kind of opens it up to all of the viewers. Your philosophy of a budget build will more than likely align with one of the builders that's in here. And that might be somebody that spends the money on machining, or some machining or some parts, and somebody that's like really low budget, maybe is just plucking a motor out of a motorhome and dropping it in a car, And I would imagine, this is speculation, but if somebody goes and builds an engine for $10,000, they're probably not going to win the popularity vote. It's okay if they do, but they're probably not going to win the popularity vote, and I think most people will probably consider that not a budget-minded build. Again, the participants are open to do whatever they want. Okay, next rule. All the expenses must be tracked, including parts, gaskets, labor, anything that you buy to put into the car has to be put in front of the viewership so that the viewers have an idea of what a real build costs. Because a lot of times that kind of stuff gets sort of washed out, and we don't get a chance to see, well, what did it cost to build that engine? What are the specialty things? Like if we're trying to build a budget engine, there's going to be some cost benefit analysis that you're kind of weighing out. It's like, so let's say, I'm considering a windage tray. Maybe it's $100. All right. So do I buy a windage tray and put into this engine for the $100? Is the gain of the windage tray worth the expense? And you may decide yes, or the builder, or one of the participants here may decide yes, and maybe somebody else decides no. And I would imagine that things like that are put into consideration, sometimes you can't do them all. You start doing too many of those things, and then all of a sudden you've got yourself laying out a couple of $1,000s and a lot of extra performance adds that may be worth it to some, but maybe not worth it to others. So if you added all of those little things up and it brought the bill to, say, $3,000, but you negated those and you decided not to use those things, maybe you build a $1,500 engine. Which is more attractive? Is it the $1,500 engine, or is it the $3,000 engine? By the way, I'm making up these numbers. And like when it comes to machine work, obviously getting a bore is a worthwhile activity, but something like boring your engine over 30, now you're getting into new pistons, and then do you go further? Do you do a line bore? Do you square up the block? Those are the kind of things that they cost a little bit more money, and they're probably worth it when you're building a full-on, engine build. Maybe for a car that's more valuable and worth it, but for a budget build, maybe that's a little more than you want to spend to just make a motor run. And so something else I want to point out real quick is, so not only are we not going to account the original purchase price of it, but we're also not going to count any stock parts that may be in that engine or that you may have laying around. So for example, let's say you've got a late model 440 that's got very low compression pistons in it, and you also have an early let's say a 69 440 that's got higher compression pistons that were from the factory. Because those are factory components, you can take those pistons and put them in your late model smog, low compression engine, and that cost is not associated. That cost does not go against your build or your bottom line. Okay, but if you had, say, some aftermarket pistons laying around, let's say Keith Black pistons or something, they're 10-to-1 or whatever. Those are obviously not factory components or original parts. We're going to take a page out of our build off with Jeremy and Sort of Stock Mopars, and any of those parts that we may have laying around, we're going to present them to our viewers to decide the value. So if I had 10-to-1 Keith Black pistons laying around, obviously not stock components, I would present them to the audience and ask, what's this set of pistons worth? And everybody will put their 2 cents in there, what they think those pistons are worth as used parts, and then we will average it out, and then that cost average will go against the build. Everything else that's purchased, you have a hard number. If you buy it from Summit and it costs $300, it's $300. Simple. Okay, so who's in the build? I mean, this is kind of a cool thing. Obviously, I'm in the build. Ruben from Muscle City Madness, he's in the build. Chris Albrecht from Talkie Mopars, he's in the build. Just Mopar Joe, he's in the build. Jeremy from Sort of Stock Mopars, he's in the build. And kind of a newcomer to the group, Terry at T's Good Times Garage, he's in the build. Guys that I'm not sure about that are kind of they're in the group, but I don't know if they're really, I haven't gotten a clear commitment from them that they want to participate. But if they don't participate, they're probably going to be behind the scenes kind of giving advice to the rest of us. But we've got Tall John's Fun Shop, you know who Tall John is. You've got Dutch Guy's Garage. We got Sean that came out, he was Ruben's buddy, came out with us to mats and duct tape. Sean's kind of new to the group too, and he's actually building a 68 Dodge Coronet like it's a shell of a car, and him and Ruben plucked a 440 out of a boneyard. I think more him. I think Ruben filmed more than anything. But anyway, he's going to drop that 440 into this Coronet to make it to duct tape drags, which is in about 4 months. So I don't know if Sean is actually participating in the engine build portion of this, but he is kind of doing that budget engine build by default and building a car. So I definitely suggest you go check him out. He is Mopar on the Brain on YouTube. And then we got Shade Tree Vintage Auto. He's in the group, but he is not going to participate in this build. He's got other commitments to some other builds going on right now. So I encourage you to check out all of these channels. Watch the builds that they're going to do and decide for yourself which build you like the best, And come along, hang out with us, and let's see where this goes. All right, guys, later.